Good morning, JW Leary families. It's Mr. Oliver. We're into week 5, believe it or not, already of remote learning. And I wanted to check base or touch base with you this morning and talk to you a little bit about grading because we're going to have some changes in grading for fourth quarter. Today's Monday the 20th, and we're actually printing and mailing third quarter report cards today, just so families know the report card grades were determined by taking their progress report average and then only moving up for remote learning. So once again, the third quarter progress report became the floor for the grade we were going to give them in third quarter, and it could only be adjusted up based on what they were doing in remote learning. And the reason we've only adjusted up is because there are some equity issues. Not everybody has access to this or can do it as easily as other people are. So that's what's going to happen with third quarter, and you should be seeing those report cards hopefully by the end of the week this week. Fourth quarter is a different animal altogether because we enter fourth quarter in the COVID-19 closure and we need to do some things differently with grading. What we're going to be doing for fourth quarter is the following. We've created a rubric for how we're going to grade lessons, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later. But it's basically a 4-point scale that starts at a 0 and goes to a 3. And if you take a look at the rubric, you can see it's very simple and self-explanatory. A 0 is nothing was submitted at all. They can get a 1 on the rubric for partial completion. They open the slides. We can actually track and monitor if they're opening the slides through Google Classroom. They can get a 2 if all components of the lessons were created and or completed and done. And they can earn a 3 if they kind of go above and beyond the basic expectation of the lesson and do really good work. We wanted to leave a way in there to recognize our students who are really going above and beyond. So the rubric is simple, and the reason why it's simple and different is because we're really living in non-traditional times, right? It's not a traditional time for school, so our grading can't look traditional. It wouldn't make a lot of sense to do hundreds and 90s and 80s because this whole thing is so different right now. Now, as you look at the rubric, I want to give you a word of caution. There's an inclination when you look at a rubric like this to think that to convert it in your head to normal number grades. Like a 0 would be a 0, a 1 would be a 25, a 2 would be a 50, a 3 would be a 100. Please don't do that. The answer is nope to that. That's not what this is intended to be. This is a framework that we're establishing so all of the teachers in grades 7 through 12 have a common reference point to give grades, so at a later time we can make some decisions about grades. And what I mean about that, if I can get on to the next slide, I have to move myself. There's really two things that can logically happen over the course of this quarter. We don't know where the COVID closure ends, but there's really only one or two things that are going to happen. One, we're going to be out for the rest of the year. Hopefully not, but it's possible. And if we are, likely we're going to determine that our grades are going to be pass-fail for fourth quarter. And if we come back, then we're going to have to figure out how these rubric grades are going to get put back into the grade book. In either one of these two scenarios, we're going to have to figure out what the rubric grades mean. And that's something that we're going to do at a later time, not because for the reason that we can't do it right now. We don't know how the closure ends. We don't know how long it goes on for, so we really don't know what we're planning for. But the rubric framework puts us in a good spot to do either one of these two things later. And what I mean by that, if I can get on to the next slide, I'm going to move myself again. It's at a later time, we're going to bring together staff from the junior high and high school once we know what we're planning for. And we're going to figure out how rubric grades convert into either one of those two scenarios. So if we come back to school, we'll probably convert it back to a number at some point in time. Or if we stay out for the quarter, we'll figure out what passing and failing means. So for example, at the screen, you can see we may decide, and these decisions haven't been made yet. This is just an example. We could decide that the lowest grade we're going to give somebody if we come back into school is a 50. That's what they're going to get for a 0. We do that already in first and second quarter of the school year. We limit the lowest grade. We could decide that if they've been checking in at all, they're passing. We could decide that if they do all their work, it's an 85. We could decide if they do it at a high level, it's 100. Or you could see if it's a pass fail. We decide that if it's zero, it's a fail, but everything else is a pass. We'll need to look at this, and I can envision us creating scales, and we'll communicate out when this happens. But those decisions will be made some point in time down the line. What's important for families to know right now? Oh, there's no room for me. I'll put myself here for a minute. Um, you need to know that remote learning work is being graded, but it's not the grade you're used to seeing. It's on a 3 point scale. So if you open up School Tool later on this week and you see your kid got a 3, don't panic. That's really good. That means they did everything well. Um, excuse me. You need to know that these grades for fourth quarter will be figured into their averages for the year, but we're not going to determine how and why that's going to happen until later on when we have a clearer picture of what's going on for the COVID closure. And the last thing, and probably most important for you, is to know that starting this week, the week of April 20th, you're going to start seeing grades go up in School Tool again. I know that this is going to be a relief for me as a parent because I've been curious about how my own child is doing. I have kids at both Nightingale and the high school. So you'll be able to get into the parent portal and you'll be able to see how your students are doing. The expectations for teachers is that at least they're going to do one grade a week, but some will likely grade more. And everything will be on the 3 point scale that we've just discussed. So I'm hoping this gives you a little bit of clarity about what we're doing for grading for the fourth quarter or until the end of the closure. Obviously, as the closure ends or we get to the end of the school year, I'll follow up with everybody and let you know how we're converting it and how things are going to work. But I just wanted to give you this much information now so you had some idea of what was going on as you start to see grades come out this week. I'm going to move myself up here for a minute. As always, if you need anything from me, just give me a phone call. My office phone number is forwarded to my personal cell, so feel free to call me whenever you need, or you can shoot me an email. I hope everybody is doing well and you're healthy. We miss you. We miss your students. By all means, if you need anything, give me a call. Have a good afternoon or a good day, I guess, JW or your families. Thanks so much, and now I got to figure out how to get out of here. I swear I can figure it out. There we go. Bye bye.